Hello, I'm Richard Chambers, Senior Advisor, Risk and Audit at Audit Board, and welcome to another in my continuing series, Agents of Change. I'm joined today by Leandro Pontes, a multi-certified, seasoned professional with over 13 years of experience in internal audit. He currently leads the global internal audit function at Tide, a UK-based fintech company. Welcome to the show, Leandro.
Thank you very much, Richard. Thank you very much for having me.
I authored this book, Agents of Change, and in the book, the thrust behind the book, and we've just published the second edition, but the thrust behind the book is that internal auditors need to be catalysts, bringing great ideas forward to help the organization transform and change. It's no longer good enough to just be the ones who provide reports that tell them what they did wrong. How do you feel about that role for internal auditors?
Yeah, I fully agree. I think that one of the most beautiful parts of the internal audit, especially in a very volatile and dynamic world that we live in, is to be able to provide this type of value, not only being like the value protecting function, but actually adding value to the organization, to the different functions, making sure that we help the organization achieve its objective. So one of the key things that I always think about is that being objective centric is a key aspect, and there's no way an internal audit function remains relevant within the organization without looking at what the company is trying to achieve, where the company is going, how they're going to achieve that, and how the internal audit can actually fit into this kind of wider arrangement. So this is actually an important part, so I couldn't agree more with your opinion.
Thank you. Thanks. Well, you know, the world has changed so much in the last 5 years since the onset of COVID. We've just been in a continual state of disruption almost. I refer to it as the era of permacrisis. In this kind of volatile environment, how does internal audit help its organization navigate all the uncertainty, all the risk, and be positioned for strength in the future?
That's a very good question, actually. So I think that one of the key aspects is for internal audit to be part of the conversations, the strategic conversations at the company level. So I think that once the internal audit is involved in this kind of high-level discussions, it's best placed to define its own strategy, how it's going to actually conduct the next reviews, do every single kind of activity it has planned. I have actually from my experience, two aspects from the board directly and how the board can work with the internal audit effectively, which is, in my opinion, the board should actually seek this kind of understanding of what value the internal audit function can bring, and also try to also support the internal audit function and not steer too much the internal audit activity in a way that's more like a collaborative approach. I've seen so many different kind of relationships between board and internal audit functions to point that I think that with these volatile times, as you said, and very dynamic, it's very important for the different parts to be collaborating, bringing the value together and working together and trying to actually define the next steps. And actually, there's a lot of uncertainty, so we have to make the most with the limited resources that we have.
Has your board, you mentioned your board, have your boards and executive management in your company, have they supported the idea of internal audit being this change agent, helping the organization to identify and execute strategies for change?
Yes, I've been very fortunate with the different boards I've worked with. Currently, at the company I'm working for, the board is very supportive, very open-minded, so they don't have like a fixed mind on what the internal audit function can or cannot do. Mm-hmm. Of course, we do have the responsibilities that we have to fulfill, for instance, being the eyes and ears of the board in the operational level, but also they are willing to hear from us what could potentially be done, how can we actually better integrate with the first and second line of defense. But in the past, in my previous experiences in different companies, I have experienced some kind of challenges. I think that dealing with the board is always a matter of also helping them into the kind of the education part. Mm-hmm. So helping them understand
the potential for internal audit, what it can do.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. I think regardless of the profile of the board, you're going to get to that point. You're going to have to have these kind of discussions. But depending on the profile, that process is a little easier than the others. And depending on, of course, the board is a major stakeholder of the internal audit function. It's all about understanding the value they want to get also from the internal audit. So it's kind of a very challenging but very exciting type of relationship and dynamics between the board and internal audit.
So I think it's so important, the relationship between internal audit, board, and management, and particularly when it comes to internal audit's role in helping the organization. Let me toss out another challenge that the profession is facing right now, and that is this idea of talent. Chief audit executives say that the number one challenge and the number one risk for internal audit is to be able to recruit and retain the right talent. That's ostensibly talent that can help navigate some of the technology changes and so forth. What's your experience been when it comes to talent, and do you have any strategies that you like to fall back on when you're looking for a new internal audit member of your team?
Yes, this is I can agree that this is one of the major challenges that we face. Luckily, my experience leading internal audit functions were with very lean teams. So essentially, we had like few internal auditors, very specialized in key areas. So the hiring process for such position is very challenging. So it takes a long time for you to find the right candidates and trying to kind of get the right skill set. Of course, internal audit, one of the beauties of the profession as well is that you have to encompass so many different skills. On the technical side, the hard skills and the soft skills. So you have to have these aspects combined. So we try to focus on what is actually the key aspects that we want to bring to the team, and then try to find the best candidates. Of course, we remain flexible, and that's the way we were able to hire the best team members that we hired in the past. But that's actually the way we have done. In terms of the retention, our retention for me, I think with this, the way the world is going now, we need to also define, depending on the context, the company, how we work, the internal audit function itself. You have to define what retention looks like, because very often in our case, because we are a very lean structure, we have a very lean structure. We have to bring people with some kind of entrepreneurial mindset. So these people, what is retention for them? Very often, I don't like generalizing, but very often those types of professionals, they want to grow very rapidly. They are very kind of dynamic. They put a lot of efforts in growing their careers. So those are not the professions that we used to see a couple of years ago that could stay like for 10 or 15 years doing the same thing. The way we have approached that has been very effective is to try to understand from the professional what they want for their careers and how can we actually enable that. Because if we can actually work that way with them, they're gonna remain motivated. They're gonna actually be very happy doing what they're doing, and they're gonna do the best work, even if it's for not that long, like for 3 years or 4 years. But you're gonna make sure that the value you're gonna get from that team member is the best you could get. And also, the company has added a lot of value for
Well, it's obvious you're still a relatively young internal auditor, and you've progressed very rapidly to be a chief audit executive. So I think you must have a good insight on what it takes to motivate young professionals.
Yeah, so I think that's probably the reason I kind of relate with young professionals, because I've always been very, very aggressive with my career, trying to kind of build up and develop myself, continuous learning. Another aspect that I love about internal audit is that you have to learn every single day, and I love that. And that's the way. So when we hire a new team member, I try my best to actually speak their language, understand what they want to do, and be very open to the positioning. How can we actually set that person for success within the organization and beyond, because that's the important aspect for the profession as a whole. Right. I think that every single internal auditor is actually an ambassador of the profession itself. So we have to think about the future of the profession as well.
That's some great advice. Well, we talk about what it takes to be an agent of change. And in the book, we say you've got to have really strong business acumen. You've got to be great at building relationships. You've got to be strategic have that ability to see farther into the future, and you got to be innovative. So are there other things that you think it takes to be a change agent?
I think those 4 attributes cover pretty much everything. I think that there are other aspects that, as I mentioned, that actually cross all these 4 attributes, which is remaining flexible and continuously being curious, actually,
Right.
open to learn new things and
Right.
adapt what you're doing, how you're doing to actually add value. One thing that I think about innovation, being innovative, actually, that some people just they kind of summarize innovation to new technologies. But one thing that I keep actually pushing with my team is that new technologies are not innovation by themselves, actually. New technologies are tools that you use to solve a problem. Actually,
Right.
solving a problem is actually the innovation itself. So
Right.
essentially, it's not about like, we had like 15, 20 years ago, the data analytics picking up, and then
Right.
we had data visualization as well. We had machine learning 10 years ago, perhaps. And then now we have generative AI. And I see a lot of people trying to push to adopt these new technologies as kind of the end goal.
Right.
But actually, the role of the internal audit function, not only the internal audit leader, but actually the entire team, is to actually understand what the problem they're trying to solve and how they can actually feed this technology.
Technologies are not the ends, they're the means.
Exactly, 100%. Yes.
Absolutely. Good. And thank you very much for joining us. It's been a great conversation. I think you've given some great insights to members of our profession, and it's always good to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Richard.
And thank you for joining us in my continuing series, Agents of Change.